March 24th, 1945, 03:17 hours, northern Okinawa. The room is dark except for the glow. A pale green circle pulses softly inside a canvas tent pitched into coral dust. Cigarette smoke hangs low, barely moving. A generator hums outside, steady as a heartbeat. And on the scope, faint at first, then unmistakable, small points of light begin to appear. 1, then 3, then dozens. Lieutenant James Holloway leans closer, elbows on the plotting table, eyes narrowing. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The men around him feel it before he says a word. The tension tightens, like a wire drawn too far. "You see it too?" someone asks quietly. Holloway nods. They're coming. You can almost hear the distance collapsing, the miles of dark Pacific air shrinking second by second. The radar sweep continues its slow mechanical rotation. Each pass brings more returns. The dots multiply, arrange themselves into arcs and clusters. This isn't weather. This isn't interference. This is an air raid forming in real time. Outside the tent, the island of Okinawa lies silent. Palm fronds rustle in a warm wind. The surf breaks rhythmically along the reef. To an untrained eye, it looks undefended, exposed, too big to protect, too far from Japan to matter. That's what Japanese naval planners believed. Back in Kyushu, Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki had studied the maps and distances and come to a conclusion that felt logical, even comforting. Okinawa was large. Its coastline stretched endlessly. Radar coverage, he believed, would be fragmented. Early warning would be unreliable. The Americans might have ships, planes, guns, but they could not see everything. The island would be porous. What Ugaki could not see, what no map showed clearly, was what was happening now inside this tent at this exact moment. The screen lights up again. Bearing 085, Holloway says, his voice calm but clipped. Range 160 miles. A sailor at the plotting board marks it with grease pencil. Another reaches for a headset, already dialing a command frequency. The choreography is smooth, practiced. This isn't their first night. But tonight feels different, because the contacts are too many, too organized, and moving too fast. The radar set, a new SCR series unit shipped in pieces across half the world, has been operating for weeks now. It sits on ground the Japanese believed couldn't support sophisticated electronics, too humid, too rough, too vulnerable. Yet here it is, and it's working. You can almost feel the shift, the subtle moment when uncertainty gives way to clarity. Not panic, something colder, more dangerous. Certainty. Plot looks like multiple groups, the operator says. High altitude, fast movers. Holloway straightens. Kamikazes. The word lands heavy in the tent. No one flinches. By now it's expected, feared, understood. Outside, phones begin to ring along the island's command posts. Warnings ripple outward, to airfields, to ships offshore, to anti-aircraft batteries hidden in revetments and hillsides. The island is awakening. Far to the north, over open water, Ensign Hiroshi Tanaka sits strapped into the narrow cockpit of his Zero. Engine vibrating through the airframe. The night sky is endless and black, stars scattered like pinpricks above the wing. Ahead of him, navigation lights blink faintly on other aircraft, just enough to hold formation. Tanaka has been told the Americans won't see them until it's too late, that the island has gaps, blind spots, that surprise is still possible. He believes it. He has to. His fuel gauge ticks down slowly. His hands are steady on the controls. Somewhere below, the ocean reflects silver patterns in broken starlight. He thinks of timing, of courage, of the moment he'll push the nose down and commit. He does not know that a machine on Okinawa has already seen him, that his altitude, speed, and bearing are being calculated by men he will never meet. Back in the radar tent, the picture sharpens. Second wave confirmed, someone says, trailing group at 180 miles. Holloway exhales through his nose. 2 waves, maybe more. He reaches for the microphone. Control, this is early warning red. Multiple inbound raids detected. Repeat, multiple inbound raids. Fighters scramble immediately. The response crackles back, urgent and immediate. Orders cascade. Engines will be starting within minutes. Pilots will be running in the dark, boots slapping concrete, parachutes half-fastened. The clock has started. And that is the moment. That one Japanese planners never fully accounted for. Time. Radar doesn't stop planes. It doesn't fire guns. It doesn't shoot back. What it does is steal surprise. And without surprise, everything changes. Holloway watches as the dots move closer, each sweep shaving off miles. He feels a strange calm settle over him. The system is working. The net is closing. The island, supposedly undefendable, is bracing itself with hours to spare. He knows what that means for the men inbound, for the ships offshore, for the battle that hasn't officially begun yet. The screen pulses again. Brighter now. Closer. And somewhere in the darkness above the Pacific, pilots flying toward Okinawa still believe they are unseen. They are wrong. The assumption had felt reasonable. From the offices and briefing rooms of the Imperial Japanese Navy, Okinawa looked like a problem too large to solve cleanly. The island stretched more than 60 miles from tip to tip, ringed by reefs and cliffs, battered constantly by wind and salt. Its interior was broken and uneven, riddled with hills, ravines, and dense vegetation. Building a continuous defensive network there, especially one dependent on delicate electronics, seemed impractical. Radar, Japanese planners believed, was fragile, too sensitive to humidity, too dependent on uninterrupted power, too exposed to air attack, and most importantly, too limited in range and reliability to give the Americans meaningful warning against massed night or dawn raids. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki had studied Allied capabilities closely. He respected American industrial strength, their carriers, their aircraft production. But radar, especially land-based early warning systems on a newly seized island, felt like an overestimation of their reach. Ships, yes, the Americans could blanket a fleet with radar coverage. An island? An island was different. There would be gaps, blind arcs, delays. That belief shaped everything that followed. By March 1945, Japanese air strategy had narrowed to a single purpose: inflict maximum damage in the shortest time possible. Conventional air superiority was no longer achievable. Attrition favored the Americans too strongly. The solution, grim and deliberate, was massed special attack operations. Kikusui, floating chrysanthemums. Waves of aircraft launched in coordination, not to survive, but to strike. Surprise was the currency of this strategy. Without it, the losses would be catastrophic. But with it, even briefly, the damage could be decisive. Okinawa, they believed, still offered that window. In airfields across Kyushu, pilots were briefed in low voices. Chalkboards sketched carrier silhouettes and transport ships packed tight off Hagushi beaches. Intelligence officers emphasized timing, altitude, formation discipline, and one key reassurance: enemy early warning is limited. You could almost feel how that sentence settled into the room, how it eased nerves, how it made the impossible feel narrowly achievable. Ensign Hiroshi Tanaka listened carefully as his commanding officer spoke. Tanaka was 22, a competent pilot, not reckless, not fanatical. He understood exactly what was being asked of him. But he also understood probability. A sudden appearance over the fleet, confusion, delayed response, ships scrambling under fire, a narrow corridor of opportunity where one aircraft, just one, could break through. That was the theory. What Tanaka was not told, what his commanders could not fully imagine, was how the Americans had transformed the island itself into an extension of their fleet. Back on Okinawa, the radar network was anything but fragile. Engineers learned quickly. Antennae were anchored deep into coral. Cabling was buried or routed through trenches. Backup generators stood ready. Sets were spread across multiple sites, cross-checking returns. No single station mattered on its own. Together, they formed a web.
Lieutenant Holloway had arrived on Okinawa weeks earlier with a crate of equipment, a handful of trained operators, and orders that were blunt and simple. See everything you can. They worked through rainstorms, through power failures, through equipment that corroded faster than manuals predicted. They improvised shielding, replaced parts by cannibalizing others, learned the quirks of the terrain, and slowly the picture sharpened. By the time the first major Kikusui raid formed over Kyushu, Okinawa was no longer blind. It was listening. In the early hours before dawn, as Tanaka's formation droned southward, American radar stations tracked them not as individuals, but as patterns, speed vectors, altitude bands, gaps between waves. It was never just dots on a screen. It was intention made visible. Holloway watched as the plot expanded. He could tell just by spacing that these weren't reconnaissance flights, not random harassment. This was something deliberate. A push. Mark that as Raid Able and prep Baker behind it. The language was clinical, detached, but the meaning was anything but. Raid Able meant fighters would be vectored early. Raid Baker meant ships offshore would go to full alert, guns would be manned, ammunition hoisted, crews would be awake, not startled from sleep by explosions. Every minute of warning mattered. That was the flaw in the Japanese assumption. They believed radar was about detection. In reality, it was about preparation. Tanaka felt the first hint that something was wrong an hour later. Radio discipline had been strict, no chatter unless necessary, but now a voice broke through, clipped and tense. Maintain formation, stay on course. There was no explanation, no reassurance, just urgency. Below, the ocean darkened. Ahead, faint shapes began to appear on the horizon. Not ships, not yet, but something else. Flares? Tracers? It was too early. Tanaka's pulse quickened. He adjusted his grip, eyes straining. Then far ahead, he saw it. Searchlights. Not scattered, organized, moving in arcs, sweeping the sky like fingers. The Americans weren't scrambling, they were waiting. Back on Okinawa, Holloway checked the clock and the plot in front of him. The raid was unfolding exactly as the model predicted. Too exactly. He knew what that meant for the men inbound, for the planners who believed the island could not see them coming, for the assumption that shaped the attack. The screen glowed brighter as the range collapsed. The island was no longer undefended. It was fully awake.
The first American fighters lift off Okinawa before dawn breaks. Engines howl across darkened airstrips carved out of coral and dust. Running lights blink briefly, then vanish as wheels leave the ground. Pilots climb hard, noses pointed into the night, guided not by sight, but by voices. Vector 310, Angels 15, bogies inbound. The directions are calm, precise, almost conversational. Captain Robert "Red" Ellison grips the stick of his F-4U Corsair as it claws upward through thin cloud. The cockpit vibrates violently, the engines roar, pressing into his chest. He's flown combat missions before, Saipan, Leyte, but this feels different. This time, they know exactly where the enemy is. You can almost feel the confidence that brings. Not arrogance, something sharper, controlled. Ellison glances at his instruments, then at the dark sky ahead. Somewhere out there, Japanese aircraft are closing in, believing they still hold surprise, believing they will appear suddenly over ships clustered offshore. They won't. Contact in 2 minutes, the controller says. Multiple groups, maintain altitude. Ellison swallows and nods, though the controller can't see him. He tightens his harness and steadies his breathing. The sky ahead remains empty until it doesn't. At first, it's just movement, a flicker against the stars, then a shape, then many. Dark silhouettes slide into view, wings catching faint moonlight. They're flying disciplined, steady, trusting the darkness to protect them. Ellison flips his gun switch to hot. The first American tracers streak upward, sudden and violent, tearing the illusion apart. Inside his Zero, Ensign Hiroshi Tanaka jerks as light explodes ahead of him. Green and red tracers slash through the air, passing close enough to feel. The radio erupts with overlapping shouts. "Enemy fighters, 12 o'clock. Break, break, stay in formation." The words collide uselessly. Formation is already dissolving. Tanaka banks hard left, instinct overriding training. His Zero shudders under the strain, controls stiff as he dives. The sky is no longer empty, it's alive, with searchlights, tracers, silhouettes moving impossibly fast. The Americans are here. Too early, too organized. Back on Okinawa, Holloway watches the radar scope as blips merge, scatter, disappear. He can tell when an engagement begins just by the way the returns behave. "That's intercept," he says quietly. No one celebrates. They know what's happening above the water. Men are dying, planes are burning, but this is the system doing exactly what it was built to do. Ellison lines up on a Zero, climbing desperately, unaware he's being hunted. The Corsair closes fast, its speed advantage undeniable. Ellison squeezes the trigger. The guns chatter, the Zero shudders, then erupts in flame, spiraling downward in a long, terrible arc. Ellison doesn't follow it down. There's no time. More targets flood his canopy, too many. This isn't a dogfight, it's a slaughter unfolding in layers. Tanaka pulls out of his dive just in time to see another Zero disintegrate in mid-air. Pieces tumble past him, fragments flashing white-hot. His mouth goes dry. This isn't how it was supposed to be. They were meant to arrive unseen, to strike ships still forming up, to overwhelm defenses before they could react. Instead, the defenses are already in place. Searchlights snap on in coordinated grids. Anti-aircraft fire begins to rise from ships offshore, not scattered, but measured, walking the sky at known altitudes. Every minute of warning has multiplied American strength. Tanaka's fuel gauge ticks lower as he weaves through chaos. His hands are slick with sweat. He spots a break in the clouds ahead, an opening toward the island. If he can just get through, if he can just reach the ships. But the Americans are everywhere now. Fighters swoop in from above, from the sides, from behind. They don't chase blindly. They intercept, cut off, herd. Tanaka feels the first hit slam into his fuselage. The Zero bucks violently. Warning lights flicker. The engine coughs. He shoves the throttle forward anyway. Below him, Okinawa looms larger, an island that was supposed to be undefendable. It looks bristling now, alive with fire. Ellison pulls up hard, narrowly avoiding collision with another Corsair streaking past. The sky is filled with movement, American planes flowing where radar tells them to be, Japanese planes breaking apart into isolated, desperate runs. This isn't air combat as Ellison learned it. This is a system executing a decision made hours earlier in a tent on Okinawa. Back at the radar station, Holloway marks another cluster fading out. He doesn't smile. He doesn't look away. He knows this is only the first wave, and already the cost to the attackers is far higher than anyone on the Japanese side expected. The assumption has collapsed. Not gradually, all at once. Above the island, the battle continues to rage, but its outcome is beginning to harden into something unavoidable, and there are still more dots approaching on the screen.
The radar sweep does not slow. Back inside the early warning tent on Okinawa, the green line continues its endless rotation, painting the future in faint pulses of light. Some contacts vanish abruptly, destroyed, scattered, broken apart. Others keep coming, reshaping themselves into smaller, faster fragments. Lieutenant Holloway rubs his eyes, but doesn't look away. Second wave is reorganizing, lower altitude, faster approach. Holloway exhales. They're adapting. That, more than anything, tells him how badly the first assumption failed. The Japanese pilots have realized what they're facing, but realization in the air comes with a brutal cost. Above the island, Captain Ellison feels the shift immediately. The sky grows more chaotic, less structured. Zeros no longer fly in neat arcs. They dive individually, hugging clouds, skimming just below searchlight beams, trying to slip through the net. But the net adjusts. Controllers vector fighters lower. Anti-aircraft gunners recalibrate fuses. Ships offshore shift formation, opening fire lanes, overlapping coverage. What had been reaction now becomes anticipation. Radar is no longer just warning, it is command. Ellison hears it in his headset. Bandits descending to Angels 5, Vector 270, cut them off. He banks without hesitation. The Corsair drops like a stone, engines screaming. The cloud layer breaks apart, revealing Okinawa below. Runways lit, guns flashing, ships bristling offshore. The island is no longer a target, it is a weapon. Ensign Hiroshi Tanaka feels the truth settling in as his Zero limps forward, controls sluggish, fuel nearly gone. The airspace around Okinawa is saturated with American presence. Fighters, flak, tracers, searchlights sweeping in disciplined patterns. There is no gap, no blind side. Every approach is watched. Every altitude is covered. This is not a battlefield reacting to an attack. This is a battlefield waiting for one. Tanaka hears a voice over the radio, strained, distant. Proceed, proceed, do not hesitate. But hesitation has nothing to do with it. Tanaka pushes forward anyway. He lowers his nose towards the coastline, towards the shapes of ships beyond the reef. His breathing quickens. His world narrows to a tunnel of motion and noise. A Corsair crosses his path like a blade. The guns fire. The Zero shudders violently. Smoke pours from the engine cowling. Tanaka pulls instinctively, but the aircraft refuses to climb. He realizes in that instant that he will not reach the fleet. That realization is sharper than fear. Back on Okinawa, Holloway watches as entire raid formations dissolve into scattered returns. The screen that once showed dozens of dots now shows only isolated flashes. Planes separated from their timing, their coordination destroyed. Radar has done what guns alone could not. It has broken the attack before it arrives. Senior officers arrive at the tent, watching silently. No one speaks. They don't need to. The picture tells the story. The Japanese belief that Okinawa could not be fully defended, that early warning would be incomplete, has failed completely, and the cost is being paid in the sky, minute by minute. Ellison pulls up again, scanning for new targets, jaw clenched. He feels no triumph, only a grim awareness that this system, this invisible coordination, is changing the nature of war itself. Tanaka's Zero begins to lose altitude rapidly now. The coastline slides beneath him. He glimpses Okinawa's ridges, gun flashes, smoke columns rising inland. So this is what they built, he thinks. So this is what they see. He forces the nose down one last time, not towards ships, but towards land. The outcome no longer matters. The mission has already failed. Above him, American fighters continue to flow into position, guided by voices from unseen rooms, by screens that glow steadily through the night. The battle for Okinawa has not yet reached its bloodiest ground phase, but in the air, something irreversible has already happened. The age of surprise is ending, and the radar screen keeps turning.
By mid-morning, the sky over Okinawa feels hollowed out. Smoke drifts in long, uneven layers. Wreckage dots the sea beyond the reef. Dark stains where aircraft went in. Brief flashes where something burned and vanished beneath the surface. Anti-aircraft guns fall silent one by one, barrels hot, crews exhausted, ears ringing. But the radar screens do not rest. Inside the tent, Holloway watches the returns thin out, then thicken again. Smaller groups now, fewer dots, more erratic movement. The pattern has changed, and with it, the meaning. They're sending them anyway, an operator says quietly. Holloway nods. They have to. That is the cruel logic of it. The Japanese air arm has committed to this strategy. It cannot pause, cannot rethink in time. The machinery of the operation is already in motion, fuel allocated, aircraft armed, pilots briefed. Even as losses mount, the next wave is already airborne. And radar will see them too. Far to the north, surviving Japanese pilots regroup in fragments, radios crackling with incomplete orders. Commanders struggle to understand what went wrong.
Reports are confused, contradictory. Enemy fighters appeared immediately. Searchlights were already on us. Anti-aircraft fire was coordinated. These are not complaints. They are observations, and they are devastating. Vice Admiral Lugaki receives the first full summaries later that day. He reads them carefully, line by line, expression unreadable. The numbers are worse than anticipated. Far worse. Aircraft destroyed before reaching target. Formations broken apart long before contact. Losses incurred at distances that should have been safe. The realization is slow, but inexorable. The island is not porous. It is sealed. What Ugaki understands now, too late, is that radar has shifted the battlefield forward in time. Okinawa's defenses no longer begin at the shoreline or the gun battery or the carrier screen. They begin hours away, in the darkness, before pilots even see land. Back in the air, Captain Ellison feels the weight of it as well. His Corsair lands hard on the coral strip, tires screeching, fuel nearly gone. Ground crews rush in, faces tight, efficient. How many? One asks. Ellison shakes his head. Too many. He climbs down slowly, legs unsteady. His hands still smell of cordite and oil. He looks back up at the sky, half expecting more shapes to appear. They do. Radar calls come in again, another raid forming. Smaller this time, less confident, but still lethal if it gets through. Ellison heads for the briefing shack without a word. He knows the routine now. They all do. Radar speaks. Fighters respond. The cycle repeats. This is not a battle of improvisation. It is a process. For Ensign Tanaka, there is no process left. His Zero breaks apart as it strikes the hillside inland, the impact sudden and absolute. The aircraft never reaches its intended target. It never even reaches the ships. He is one of many whose final moments unfold unseen, far from the objective, erased by a system he never knew existed. That is the cost of being seen. Not heroism, not defiance. Erasure. By evening, Okinawa's sky is quiet again. Ships offshore remain afloat, damaged, yes, but intact. Crews count the cost and realize how much worse it could have been. In the radar tent, Holloway finally steps outside, blinking in the daylight. The island smells of smoke and hot metal. He feels older than he did yesterday. He knows this will not be the last raid, but he also knows something has shifted permanently. The enemy now understands what they are facing, and understanding, in this case, offers no solution.
Night returns to Okinawa with a heavy stillness, as if the island itself is holding its breath. The generators hum back to life. Lamps glow inside command tents. The radar sets warm again, their soft electrical whine blending with the distant surf. Men rotate shifts, rub their eyes, sip bitter coffee. No one talks about victory. There is too much work left to do. Lieutenant Holloway stands once more before the screen. The green sweep arcs around, empty. Then, faint returns begin to bloom at the edge. Again. Smaller this time, fragmented but unmistakable. They're still coming, someone says. Holloway nods. They will keep coming. This is the realization that defines the battle long before the ground fighting reaches its peak. Japanese command now understands what Okinawa truly is, but understanding does not undo momentum. The aircraft are built, the pilots are trained, the doctrine is set. Kikusui cannot stop. In Tokyo and Kyushu, staff officers adjust numbers, not strategy. They calculate acceptable losses in pencil strokes that grow heavier with each revision. What radar has done is not merely reveal incoming aircraft, it has removed uncertainty. And certainty is lethal. Every new raid launches knowing it will be seen. Every pilot climbs into a cockpit aware that surprise is gone, yet bound by duty to fly anyway. What remains is not hope of success, but obligation. Captain Ellison launches again just before midnight.
His Corsair lifts into a sky already marked by searchlights probing methodically, long white beams cutting through cloud layers like surgical tools. He feels no adrenaline now, only focus. The radio speaks calmly. Raid Charlie, bearing 035, Angels 10. Ellison banks smoothly. The Americans no longer scramble in desperation, they intercept on schedule. Far above, a handful of Japanese aircraft push forward through darkness, engines straining. They fly lower now, hugging clouds, hoping terrain will mask them. It doesn't. Radar sees through altitude tricks, through timing changes, through desperation. Ellison spots 1-0 breaking formation, trying to dive beneath the interception line. He rolls in behind it effortlessly. The burst is short. The 0 shatters. Ellison pulls away without watching it fall. This is no longer combat in the old sense. It is enforcement. Back at the radar station, Holloway watches the plot collapse yet again. He notes the times automatically, reaction windows, intercept efficiency. The data will be sent upward, studied, refined. War is becoming measurable. That is the true turning point. Vice Admiral Ugaki writes later that the defense of Okinawa revealed the enemy's overwhelming detection capability. It is an understatement that masks the deeper truth. Japan has lost control of the air not because of inferior pilots or aircraft alone, but because the Americans now command time itself. By the third night, loss has become undeniable even to those who planned the raids. Aircraft vanish from rosters faster than they can be replaced. Veteran pilots are gone, new ones barely trained. And radar continues to rotate, indifferent. For Holloway, the realization arrives quietly, not as triumph, but as weight. He understands that this system, this invisible wall, will define every major operation that follows. That future pilots on both sides will live or die based on what machines see long before human eyes ever can. He steps outside again near dawn, the horizon pale and still. Somewhere inland, artillery rumbles faintly. The ground war is only beginning, but the outcome in the air is already decided. The island that was believed undefendable has become a warning. Not because it could not be attacked, but because it could see every attack coming. Radar has not just protected Okinawa, it has erased the final illusion that surprise can survive against a fully integrated defense. That is the moment of no return.
If this story stayed with you, take a moment to let us know. A simple like helps this history reach people who may never have heard it. It tells the algorithm that these moments still matter. Subscribe if you want to stay with us. Here, we uncover the moments in the Second World War when everything changed, when there was no return. These are not just battles. They are human realizations, sacrifices, and truths buried beneath decades of noise. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or somewhere else entirely. Tell us if someone in your family lived through this war. You're not just watching a video, you're helping keep these memories alive. Because once the stories disappear, there really is no return. Thank you for watching.